Sheila Singh, your podcast host, and I'd like to welcome you to the My Brand HQ podcast, all things personal branding for career acceleration. This podcast is for talented, ambitious career professionals like you who are wanting to be perceived as a thought leader, to be top of mind to those that matter, and to make an impact and stand out, be that in your team, your organization, or your industry, and to be inspired by other successful leaders. I will be interviewing high-achieving career professionals who have carved out a successful career in their field and are open to sharing their career journey, their challenges, their learnings and insights with you, someone who is looking to establish your personal brand and accelerate your career. Through my personal branding and coaching practice, I enable career professionals primarily in the technology industry to earn more money, to increase their salary. In fact, I spoke to all of my past clients that I've worked with over several years and learned that actually overall, they've received an average of 47% increase in their package. Would that be a great place to be? They've also all achieved at least one, if not more, promotions or moved on to a higher level in their career at another organization. And they're looking to advance their career while showing up as the best version of themselves. If this sounds like you, then do reach out to me and let's have a chat. And why do I do this? Well, during my corporate career spanning 25 years, I quickly realized that hard work alone was not enough to get me to where I wanted to be and the success that I strive for. And my belief is that hard work, coupled with creating and establishing a strong personal brand, can both influence and accelerate your career and get you to where you want to be. On the My Brand HQ podcast today, we're going to be speaking to Jacqui Ferguson. Jacqui is an experienced CEO from the technology industry and the former CEO of Hewlett Packard Enterprise Services for the EMEA region, which was a $3 billion P&L and 10,000 people business, serving large corporate and mid-sized companies with transformation, digital, technology and business process solutions. Jacqui has extensive global experience, including living and working in Silicon Valley for 3 years as the Chief of Staff to Meg Whitman, the former Chairman and CEO at Hewlett Packard, focused on a new company strategy and transformation. She is now a non-executive director for Wood PLC, Tesco Bank and Croda PLC. And in 2018, Jacqui won the Sunday Times NED to Watch Award in honour of Dame Helen Alexander. Jacqui is a Trustee of Engineering UK, a not-for-profit organisation focused on inspiring young people from all kinds of backgrounds into engineering and technology careers. She is a member of the Scottish First Minister's Advisory Board for Women and Girls, aimed at improving gender equality. And she's also a business advisor to NG UK, a fellow of the Institute of Engineering and Technology and an inaugural mentor in the Scottish Women's Mentoring Scheme. Jacqui chaired the Public Services Strategy Board for the CBI and was a board member of the Tech Partnership, the industry body aimed at improving UK technology skills. She's also passionate about what technology can enable, getting young people from all backgrounds interested in STEM, advancing more women into executive careers and progressing gender equality. In today's episode, Jacqui will be sharing with us her experience of embarking on a career in a male-dominated environment, her vision for a career journey and how that evolved, the importance of mentors and sponsors in building a strong professional network, and her passion for gender equality in the workplace and the challenges that we face with encouraging more women into STEM roles. So let's head over and hear what Jacqui has to say. Hi Jacqui, how are you doing today? It's lovely to have you here on the My Brand HQ podcast.
Oh, I'm delighted to be here today, Leila. Thanks so much for inviting me to join you.
It's an absolute pleasure. I'm really looking forward to chatting to you today. So let's kick off with the first question. When you embarked on your career, did you have a vision of where you wanted to be, where you started out?
So right at the beginning, absolutely not. I sort of really was in that process of trying to learn and try new things. I mean, when I started my career, it was 30 years ago, so the technology industry really hadn't started properly. And back then we had no internet, no mobile phones. So really I sort of fell into my career. It wasn't until I was about 30 where I really took a step back and sort of thought about where I wanted to go.
Okay. And so at that point, when you took that step back, did you get an idea of, what you actually wanted to do with your career in terms of what you wanted to be, what you wanted to stand for?
Yeah, there was a couple of people that really stood out, role models that really inspired me, and I thought, gosh, I'd really like to be like that person. I wish I could be quite as good as they are, and
Mm-hmm.
that's when I started to chart my path in a much more structured way around how do I achieve that objective. I need to learn all these new things. I need to have different experiences to be prepared to do that type of job. And when I was 30, that's when I decided that I really wanted to be a chief executive.
Oh, wow. So you had that vision from way back then.
It took me over 10 years to get there, but yeah, when I was around about the 30 mark, that's when I decided. Yeah.
Okay. And was that, because obviously you've had a fantastic career in the technology industry, so was that decision about doing that in the technology sector, or were you still open at the time? Were you looking to pursue that career in tech?
No, I think I decided that the career would be in tech. I was very passionate about what technology could enable in the world, and I really enjoyed being part of the technology sector. So it really was wanting to lead a business, but in the context of technology.
Okay. Wow. And so I guess back then, that's a while ago now, and there's still struggles within the sector with getting more women into it. So during your time when you started out, I know from speaking to you previously, it was very, very male dominated. So how did this impact you, if at all?
Yeah, so early on in my career, I sort of grew up with an older brother, so I was used to being around men in a kind of equal sense for most of my life. And when I started out, I sort of was a bit gender blind. I didn't realize I was sort of roaming around in a sea of mostly men. And it wasn't until I went to a leadership meeting when I was about 30 again. It was a real sort of pivotal time in my career, when I looked around the room and there was 150 people in the room and there was 4 women, and I thought, where are they all? And it really was that point where I realized how in the minority females were in that industry.
Okay. And just carrying on that area at the moment, I mean, I know you're really, really passionate about gender equality, and encouraging more women into the STEM roles. So tell me about that. Why do you think we are struggling so much with that at the moment, particularly with the tech roles?
So when you look at the kind of pipeline into the tech industry, we only have 17% of young people coming into tech that are female. So this is a very multifaceted problem. Not only do we have pipeline problems into the sector, but we also have progression issues within the sector. When we sort of peel the onion back, we can see that we've got difficulties encouraging young girls into STEM careers. The young girls mature a lot earlier than young boys, and a lot of those sort of careers orientated activity happens in their early teens, but often young girls have decided between the ages of 8 and 10 kind of where they want to go. They're a little bit more molded at that age. So I think we've got to to address this issue, we've got to get right back into schools working to encourage young people into tech careers early on. But then we also have just a huge amount of work still to do in progressing those careers and making the work environment a good place for women to be.
Yeah, so it encourages that diversity as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and so do you see much of that happening at the moment?
So I see a lot of focus on improving the pipeline rates. I see a lot of focus on, building communities for women in technology to engage. So I do think we're making the right sort of steps to improve it. But I think we've still got such a lot more to do. There's a lot of still unconscious bias, I think, out there about what women want to do and what they don't want to do. So I think we've still got some work to do there.
Definitely. So from your perspective and your experience then, what reasons would you be giving to encourage more women into tech as an industry? Because from what I've seen, there's a lot of talk about going into the tech roles, but there's also a lot of other roles in tech. So from that perspective, what would you say?
Yeah, so I'd say, we ought to be looking at the tech industry like we would any other industry. We need salespeople and finance specialists and sales support specialists and marketing people. So I think often we perhaps see the tech industry as kind of a little geeky and nerdy, and not see the sort of scope of all of these roles. So what I would say to people thinking about a career in the tech industry, you don't have to be tech to be in tech. And I think the second thing I would say is and the second thing I would say is it's such a great industry to get experience in other industries, because tech cuts across just about every industry, from retailers to pharmaceutical companies to telcos. And a career in tech can be so varied and interesting because it takes you across so many industry sectors.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think it's almost changing the perception of the industry itself, because it's so exciting, it's so buoyant, it's evolving, it's rapidly changing, and it's a great place to be, particularly when you're starting out in your career. So absolutely agree with you. Thank you. And so tell me, what would you say throughout your experience, what are your 3 core values, your non-negotiable values from a professional point of view, which I would expect to be aligned to your personal values, but from a workplace perspective, what are your 3 non-negotiables?
Yeah, so I think the first thing is to always do the right thing. And I think trusting your instincts on what the right thing to do is super important. And I know you said it's workplace orientated, but I would be missing if I didn't mention about your family. So for me, getting that balance between family and work has been an incredibly important part of my my value set. And I suppose the third thing would be to always seek to give back, whether that's spending time to encourage young people into careers, or women into business roles, or really focusing on the diversity and inclusion agenda. Those things I think are really important to me in my value set.
Yeah. Nice, very nice. And you mentioned about role models, people that you aspire to be or to be like. So did you ever have mentors through your career that supported you and helped you along the way?
Yes, I did. And a lot of those mentors earlier in my career were male mentors, and I think men have a really important role in mentoring women to aspire to those roles that are kind of traditionally have been out of reach. I've been lucky enough to have some very strong male mentors early in my career, and then female mentors later. I would say also very important to have sponsors. So in the work environment, it's being sponsored into roles is an incredibly powerful thing.
Okay. And how does that work? Can you explain that for people who don't know about it?
Yeah, so sponsors is somebody who will speak out on your behalf, or who will advocate for you to be in a role or to be considered for a role. So it's a little bit more, I would say, active than mentoring. So it tends to be somebody who's in your organisation who acts as your sponsor, and who's your advocate, and effectively sells you a bit in the organisation for new opportunities.
Yeah. And so how would you advise people to build those relationships? Because approaching someone to be a mentor is one thing, but to get sponsors to be your advocates, how would you recommend doing that?
I think it goes back to how you create connections and relationships with people, and get them, if you like, understanding what your objectives are. So, a lot of women do not speak out about the kind of ambition that they have. You know, often they'll keep their head down and do a really good job and think that somebody will notice. But actually building those connections and making sure that people know what your ambition and aspirations are is you know, is a really important thing to do. And just asking, you know, will you be my sponsor is, you know, what's the worst thing that can happen? They can say.
Exactly. Exactly. And they may refer to somebody who will love to do the job. So yeah, you just don't know. And just talking about that, I agree with you. I place a lot of importance on building good relationships within business. So how would you say that can benefit somebody to kind of accelerate them forward in their career?
Yeah, so definitely I had underestimated the value of relationships and networks early in my career, and you know, I think there's a lot more opportunities out there these days for you to build networks inside your own organization, but equally, you know, out in industry, women in technology forums, women in business forums. I would say that, and it's just an active example, but 3 of my current non-executive positions came through my network. So if people, you know, have got a sense of who you are, what you've done, what your ambition or aspirations are, the importance of those relationships and networks cannot be underestimated.
Yeah, no, I agree. And it's interesting because somebody I was speaking to recently talked about how people will approach her for help in getting a job in an organization she's in, but hadn't even began to build a relationship. Simply because of her position in the organization, they expected her to recommend them. And you know, it's okay. You got to build the relationships first, isn't it? It's
Absolutely. I mean, you cannot just reach out to people and expect them to advocate for you, because it affects their reputation as well. So building really emotional connection, real trust, and an understanding of, you know, a long-term understanding of what people are looking for is incredibly important, because, you know, you want to be building that relationship for when you need it, not just at a moment in time. So you really have to, you know, cultivate and grow your relationships and your networks. And it works both ways. Many times you will help, and many times help will come to you. And a lot of it is indeed karma related.
It is. Absolutely agree with you. And so tell me a little bit about the challenges then that you've experienced or you've had to overcome during your career so far.
Yeah, so I think holding down a fairly chunky job whilst having 3 children and being married and keeping all of those things in hanging together was really quite challenging, particularly when the children were young. My children are now in their, you know, all in their 20s. So, you know, this was quite a few years ago, but there wasn't really as much support out there for working mums who were working full time, and those years were pretty challenging, and getting the job done and making time for, you know, for other things. I also think related to that, there still is a lot of, I believe, unconscious bias out there, where people make decisions for you, you know, for you with often the best of intentions. But, and you're giving an example, you know, when I was on maternity leave with one of my children, and when I say maternity leave, you know, back then it was 6 weeks. It wasn't 6 months. It was 6 weeks off. You know, there was a role that came up, a promotion that I'd had my eye on for quite some time, and knew that I should have been considered for the job, but I didn't even get asked. And when I came back, you know, after my maternity leave, I said to the chap who was appointing that, well, you know, did you not think about me? And he said, absolutely we did, but you just had a baby. So it was one of those moments where, you know, it was done with good intention, but it was a decision that was mine to make, and not his to make, about whether I should be considered for that promotion or not. So I think, you know, I learned something there. I think he learned something there when I told him what I thought about that. But I do think a lot of that, you know, with the best of intentions, a lot of those things happen. There is a bias about what people expect.
Yeah. And it's great bringing it to people's attention, because it's all education. We're always learning, right? So that's important as well. And so when it comes to leadership, for me, personal leadership is key, about how we lead ourselves and lead by example. So what one thing would you say is required to exhibit true leadership and to be perceived as a good leader?
Yeah, so one thing I really believe in is the job of a leader is in my book is to inspire and motivate others. So I'm a fan of servant leadership. I believe the leader's job is to help the team be successful and find ways of really achieving things that they didn't think were possible.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a lot about listening, a lot about supporting, coaching, empathy, all of those attributes you might expect, but really the strength of a leader is actually in the team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely agree with you. And so what about effective communication, and how do you think that's important in influencing your career?
Yeah, I think so. I think everybody needs to know where they're going and why. What's the purpose and what's the vision, so that they can really get behind, that journey and that destination. So being able to be clear about what is the mission, what is the vision, and why, and getting everybody on board with that is really important.
Yeah. Did you find at all, whether it's in your own experience or with others, that people have a tendency to mind read and think, you touched on this earlier actually, about you think that people know you're good at what you do and you work hard, and therefore I should get promoted for it, but actually you need to speak up, you need to express that interest, you need to make known what you're doing and what you're good at, so people have that awareness. So that's something
Yeah.
you come across.
Yeah, I think Alison, was it Alison in Wonderland, said if you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there. So I think knowing what your destination is, and probably more important, why. The why is really, really important to get behind, but knowing where you're going and making other people aware that that's what you want is really important to being successful.
Definitely, yeah. And what about personal branding? How important do you feel it is to develop your personal brand in the workplace and maybe even in your industry?
Well, I think this is really, really important. It's all about who you are and what you stand for, so people know what they're getting. So when I think of personal brand, you want to know what that person stands for. So for me, I like to think, when I'm thinking about my personal brand, I'm really passionate about getting young people into STEM careers, particularly people from disadvantaged backgrounds. I'm really passionate about women in business and women in executive positions. I'm passionate about gender equality. So I think knowing what the things are that you stand for will help people understand the kind of person you are and what they should expect.
Definitely. And so would you say people should give that consideration when they're in their career and they're looking to move up, to start thinking about their personal brand? Because oftentimes it's overlooked.
Yes, I do. I do. And when we talk in the concept of my business career, I wanted to be known for getting the job done, really taking on difficult situations and fixing them, turning them around, and making them a success. So making sure you're being thoughtful about why am I taking this opportunity? What is it going to do for my brand? How am I going to make sure that people see me in that light is really important.
Lovely, thank you. And so I know you've had a breadth and wealth of experience in your career, so can you share with us some of your big life lessons that you think will benefit our audience?
Yeah, I guess the first thing I'll say is, always trust your instincts. That sort of inner voice, that little guy on the shoulder, sometimes you really need to listen to what your instincts are saying. I think the second thing I would say is, don't be afraid of taking a risk. Most of the big leaps I made certainly in my career were when I took on something that was particularly challenging. And I think it helps you stand out a little bit more when you take something difficult on and then you turn it around. I think it's more difficult when you go into something and you're just running and it sort of looks the same. So finding that way of differentiating yourself is really important. And I guess the other thing that I had underestimated in my career, which certainly it was really important, is being able to communicate both, you know, to your team and organization, to your boss and to your influencers, you know, in a very succinct way, what you're doing, why you're doing it, and not to underestimate the value of communicating those things that you're doing. If you don't communicate, quite often, you know, people just miss completely what you've been doing and why. So the communication thing is really important. And I think we already said it, is don't be afraid to ask for what you want. Don't be afraid to ask for what you want. What's the worst thing that can happen?
Yeah, I'm a huge advocate of that. What is the worst that can happen? You might get told no, but actually I always look at that as there's better things to come. It wasn't the right thing.
Absolutely.
And so to finish off, Jacqui, can you just share a little bit about your experience in the role you had as Chief of Staff when you were at HP? I mean, that was phenomenal in terms of the opportunity. So would you like to share a little bit about that?
Yeah, so listen, I spent 3 years in Silicon Valley working for Meg Whitman, who was the chairman and chief executive at Hewlett Packard. It was a massive opportunity. That one that I actually had to make a decision on very quickly. So it was a weekend. We had to decide whether we were going to move the whole family over to California. And so big decisions there, right? So my husband quit his job to support the family unit. You know, my children, you know, had to sort of handle moving country, etc. And you know, honestly, what I would say is the first 3 months were really awful in the job. And so you know, my message though to people is, you know, you have to take these opportunities when they come along, but everything does not always go plain sailing. You're always going to have bumps in the road. But if you fast forwarded 6 months after that, it was probably the biggest learning experience of my life, like 5 MBAs in real life all at the same time. So you know, I call on those experiences you know, all the time in my day-to-day life, because I really learned so much. So I guess I would say make sure you know, you take these opportunities, but don't be rose tinted around them. They always, you know, they'll always have zigzags. You know, transformations are never straight. There's always zigzags in the road, but you know, that's where you learn.
Absolutely. And before we finish off, tell me about what are you doing now? I mean, where are you seeing your career at the moment? What is it you're focused on?
Yeah, so right now I am what's called a portfolio non-executive director. So I sit on a number of boards as a board director. And you know, as we said earlier, you always have to have in mind the destination of where you're going. And really what I'd like to be heading towards is a chairman job, or chairwoman job, or chair job, whatever we'd like to call it. But I'd certainly like to be doing a chair job at least in the next 5 years.
Awesome. Well, I wish you all the best. I have no doubt you will succeed in those ambitions. And I'd like to thank you, Jacqui, for taking time out today to have a chat with us and share your learnings. It's been fantastic hearing from you.
Thanks, Leela. It's great to talk.
Okay, we'll speak soon.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed today's episode, then please do subscribe to the show so you don't miss any future episodes. And remember to leave a review telling us about your key learnings and what you enjoyed the most. And do share this podcast with your friends and colleagues so we can spread the word on the importance of personal branding when it comes to your career advancement. And also ensure that others can benefit from these invaluable insights from many inspirational leaders. I will be eternally grateful. And if you are looking to earn more money, to get promoted, to secure your next role and advance your career, and would like me to support you personally on that journey to get you there, then reach out to me and let's arrange a chat. Alternatively, why don't you check out my personal branding launchpad? a group training and mentoring program. Finally, if you'd like to connect with me directly, then do reach out and direct message me on LinkedIn. You can find the link as well as any other resources mentioned in the show notes. I'll see you next time.